This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. On Rocky's 28th birthday party, someone presented him with a woman in front of me. I abandoned my usual gentle demeanor, smashed my wine glass, and wrecked the party scene. I packed my bags and left home alone. Everyone said that Rocky's wife, who was so helpless, would return in 3 days, with her tail between her legs. Rockey didn't care at all. A lonely girl, where could she go after leaving the Rockey family? But as countless 3-day periods passed, some even began to suspect I had died outside. Only then did Rockey make his first call. But it turned out to be a disconnected number. Later, at a renowned painter's exhibition, a side-profile portrait made Rockey lose his composure. He offered a sky-high price to buy the painting. Peter, smiling apologetically, said, "This is the portrait I'm most satisfied with for my wife. I can't part with it." At Rocky's 28th birthday party, I wore the most exquisite and beautiful dress and appeared with Rockey on my arm. As soon as we stepped down the stairs, Rockey let go of my hand and left me behind. Everyone's attention followed Rockey. I was forgotten in the corner. People began presenting gifts to Rockey. He casually signaled the butler to collect them, until someone presented a beautiful woman. All eyes turned back to me. Sympathetic, intrigued, and mocking looks. I had seen too many such malicious gazes over the years. Rockey's originally expressionless face showed a momentary daze. The woman resembled his deceased first love too closely. Presenting a woman to me in front of Rockey's wife, "You really have guts," Rockey said with a mocking smile. The gift giver flattered, "Rockey's wife is generous, she won't mind." I wasn't indifferent, they simply calculated that I wouldn't dare to care. A lonely girl raised by the Rockey family. How could she dare to say nope to the new master of the Rockey family? Rockey twirled his wedding ring between his fingers, his eyes filled with amusement. "Since Rockey's wife agrees, take her away." Before Rockey finished speaking, I had already walked a few steps to his side. I looked at the woman in front of me. The gift giver had indeed put thought into pleasing Rockey. I suddenly felt a bit tired. It seemed I couldn't maintain the dignity of Rockey's wife any longer, as my grandmother had advised. I gently pushed the champagne tower behind me. The beautifully stacked crystal glasses toppled with a crash at a light touch. Broken glass and spilled wine scattered everywhere, turning the party scene into chaos. Someone exclaimed, "Rockey's wife has gone mad." I ruined Rockey's birthday party, but he didn't seem to care much. The butler had already arranged for the guests to leave, and the mess was being cleaned up. The woman was left behind, quietly standing next to Rockey. She even resembled Rockey's first love and character. In comparison, I truly seemed to be the one who had lost her sanity. Rockey played with the woman's fingers in his hand, speaking to me casually. "Why get so angry? If you don't want to see her, I'll have her stay outside." "Don't worry." I swore to my grandmother that I would never move Rockey's wife from her position. The woman next to him also spoke to persuade me. "Rockey's wife, why get angry? A man like CEO Rockey can't have only one woman. I only admire CEO Rockey, it won't affect your position." I took off the ring from my hand, placed it on the table in front of Rockey. He raised an eyebrow. "Here's the ring back." Rockey picked up the ring and threw it into the air. The diamond ring's dazzling light flashed as it fell back into his hand. He threw it backward to the woman behind him. "Here you go. Rockey's wife says she doesn't want it, so it's yours now." Rockey stood up, sneering coldly, and instructed the butler. "Find a few teachers for my wife to teach her etiquette. I don't want to see such rudeness again." He walked a few steps, then turned back. He threw his own ring onto the ground. The ring rolled around a few times before stopping at my feet. "Since you don't want the ring, then throw it all away." Rockey left with his people. The roar of the departing car's engine was particularly pronounced in the night. The butler sighed beside me. "Madam, why provoke the sir? You know he holds a grudge against you." I picked up the ring at my feet and threw it into the trash can. "Butler, you can go on with your duties. Don't mind me." The butler sighed and left. I went upstairs alone, changed out of my elaborate dress, changed into a white t-shirt, found a suitcase, and packed all the clothes from the wardrobe that were distinctly mine. When others have marital conflicts, they still need to consider divorce agreements. But my connection with Rockey was so shallow that only a wedding ring remained. No one expected that the sensational century wedding back then. The groom and bride didn't even have a marriage certificate. I still remember what Rockey said at the wedding. "My household register can only have Serena's name. Haley, you shouldn't have married me." But what could be done? I still married him, the one I had loved for 7 years in my youth, hoping that one day I could move him. But in the end, I became the famous but insubstantial Rocky's wife in everyone's eyes. When I dragged my suitcase out, the entire villa was eerily quiet. Just like the rainy night when I was first brought back by my grandmother. 13-year-old Rockey stood on the stairs, looking at me coldly. But he turned and went to the kitchen. He brought out a cup of warm milk for me. I booked a plane ticket. After a 6-hour flight and a 3-hour drive, I returned to a remote town in the south. People say that as one ages, they wish to return to their roots. But even a homeless person misses their hometown more, even if that hometown no longer has any relatives. I rented a small courtyard in the town. The local dialect was both familiar and strange. I had left as a child and had been in the northern city ever since. I had long forgotten how to speak it. Fortunately, the person living next door was also from outside, but had come earlier than me. That day, while buying vegetables, I couldn't understand the old lady's dialect, and he helped me out. The next day I made corn cakes to thank him for his help the previous day. I found out he was a painter visiting the area. He seemed fresh out of university, exuding youthful enthusiasm, far from the northern city's people and affairs. In such a simple environment, I suddenly realized that I was only 25 years old. But having always maintained the demeanor of Rocky's wife, I felt much older. I bought flowers from the street and filled the courtyard with roses. A small rocking chair was placed next to the flower bed. Although simple, everything suited my taste. In Rocky's family garden were yellow roses that Serena liked, and an expensive piano in a glass house that was specially designed by Rockey for her. No one else could touch it. Back then, my grandmother wanted to have those roses removed. It made Rockey very angry. If the roses are gone, I won't return to this home. No one ever mentioned it again. Serena and those roses became a taboo in Rocky's home. In the afternoon, someone knocked on the door of the small courtyard. Peter, wearing a hoodie and carrying a backpack, greeted me with a bright smile when I opened the door. "Sis, I'm planning to hike up the mountain to paint the sunrise tomorrow morning. Would you like to join me for a change of scenery?" He pointed towards the mountain not far behind us. I knew it was quite a famous spot. Most visitors come to the town specifically for that mountain. I felt a bit tempted. "You don't have to worry. I camp frequently and am very experienced. It's safe." Encouraged by his enthusiasm, I nodded. Peter was indeed as experienced as he claimed. He immediately went back to get another bag, carrying both sets of camping gear himself and also had painting supplies in hand. I tried to help him share the load, but he firmly refused. "I'm very strong. Carrying these things is no trouble at all." On the way up the mountain, we talked about the past and the future. My past seemed rather mundane. It was mostly about the Rockey family and Rockey. Eventually, I became the notorious Rocky's wife with no real substance. Peter, on the other hand, was always full of fresh stories and endless dreams for the future. Life is an experience. My current dream is to become a renowned painter, so I must work hard for it. Here's a secret: I sneaked out from home. If one day you find the neighboring yard empty, it might mean I was caught and brought back. I smiled at him. It turned out we were both escapees. He had family to drag him back, while my disappearance might even be celebrated by Rockey. When we reached the top of the mountain, the sunset was just beginning. The warm golden light bathed us, creating a surreal beauty. Looking down at the town below, it was all enveloped in golden light, peaceful and serene. Peter was already busy setting up the tent. I asked him, "The sunset is beautiful too. Aren't you going to paint it?" "I prefer sunrises. They represent a new beginning, full of infinite possibilities and vitality." I sat on the stool Peter had set out, watching him work, while my mind kept replaying his words about new beginnings. Leaving the Rockey family was the bravest decision I'd made in years, but I felt like a timid and cowardly fugitive. Returning to a remote town and shrinking back into that small courtyard, I hadn't thought about what to do next. Was I to spend my life in that small courtyard? I was only 25, with endless possibilities ahead. In the early hours of the morning, I fell into a deep sleep. Despite being in the simple tent, I felt unusually at ease. As I stumbled out of the tent in the morning, Peter had already set up his easel, his expression now serious. The sunrise slowly rose, gently touching every inch of my skin. I gazed towards the rising sun, thinking of it as my new beginning. "Sis, don't move." Peter suddenly called out with excitement, startling me. I stood still, only able to see him out of the corner of my eye. Clearly, he had chosen me as his model. When he finished painting, I rubbed my stiff neck. Being a model wasn't easy. "I'll give you a massage, to thank you for being my model." Peter's hand rested on my back, applying strong pressure. I closed my eyes comfortably, enjoying his massage. On the way down the mountain, Peter talked endlessly about the inspiration he had just received. I looked at the painting and thought it was quite nice, though I couldn't understand much beyond that. Once we got back, Peter retreated into his own courtyard. I turned on the TV and was startled to see Rocky's face suddenly appear on the screen. My hand froze, which had been about to change the channel. I was relieved by the decision I made last night. Rockey frequently appeared on TV and online. I couldn't keep avoiding him forever. In the news interview, Rockey seemed unchanged. When asked about recent rumors of marital discord, his expression remained indifferent. My wife had a tantrum and went out to play for a while. She'll be back soon. Everyone envied me, a lonely orphan who had been taken in by the old lady of the Rockey family, and eventually married Rockey, such luck from a past life. But only those involved knew the reality of being ignored by everyone, resented by Rockey, holding only the title of Rockey's wife while remaining a rootless drifter in the Rockey household. Every year during the season when the yellow roses bloomed, Rockey would have the servants cut the flowers from the garden and fill the vases at home. The expensive piano in the glass house was cleaned daily. Though Serena was dead, Rockey constantly reminded me of her presence. Is it true that your argument with Rockey's wife is because of your recent assistant? Rockey frowned impatiently, reaching instinctively for the wedding ring on his finger. But it was missing. He remembered Haley's defiance, returning the ring and daring to run away, recalling the butler's frantic call about her disappearance. Rockey returned home to find Haley's side of the wardrobe emptied. Only his own suits hung in the empty space. It was simply a way to force him to get rid of the woman who resembled Serena. He knew her greatest concern was Serena's things, especially a woman who looked like Serena. But so what? With his grandmother gone and no other family, the only reliance was on him. She would return sooner or later, having tasted the hardships outside. So he told the butler, a lonely girl, where could she go after leaving the Rockey family? Do not search for her. Notify me when she returns. Under Rockey's impatience, the host quickly shifted the topic from personal matters to business. When it came to work, Rockey's expression seemed much more relaxed. It seemed Rockey's wife was a source of frowns for him. I poured myself a glass of iced water, retrieved my computer, and began working on my resume. The town was mostly filled with elderly people. It was a great place to retire, but not many job opportunities. To find work, I had to venture out. I wrote until evening, then stretched and prepared dinner. Just a simple meal of 3 dishes and a soup. Sitting at the table, I suddenly thought about whether Peter had finished his work next door. Did he forget to eat while painting, just like Rockey used to? When my grandmother was still around, Rockey would often suffer from stomach pains due to irregular meals. Later, whenever I had time, I would bring him meals at the office. At first, his secretary would block me outside the office, making me wait for an hour or 2. Eventually, he seemed to get used to it and would let me in to interrupt his work. We would eat together before he resumed. I sighed, put on a coat, and knocked on the door of the neighboring courtyard. When I didn't hear any response from inside, just as I was about to leave, the door suddenly opened. Seeing me at the door, Peter's initially impatient face broke into a smile. Sis, I'm painting you right now. I didn't expect you to show up just as I opened the door. Peter had a paintbrush in one hand, with splatters of paint on his clothes and face, looking a bit messy. But his smile was so dazzling that the paint smudges only added to his charm. You haven't eaten, have you? Would you like to come over to my place for dinner? Hearing my invitation, Peter held his stomach and groaned in realization. I'm so hungry. You're so considerate, sis. Let me put down my brush. Over the next few days, Peter and I seemed to have reached a sort of unspoken understanding. He came over every day for meals, helping me clean up and took care of the gardening tasks. If only I had a brother, having one like Peter would be quite nice. I applied for a few jobs and received interview invitations. On the day I decided to leave, I prepared to say goodbye to Peter early in the morning. As I opened the door, I saw several black cars parked in front of Peter's courtyard. Several men in suits, who looked like bodyguards, stood by the cars. I hesitated for a few minutes before stepping forward. Seeing me approach, a bodyguard reached out to stop me. Don't touch her. Peter walked out from the courtyard. The cheerful sunshine on his face was replaced by a colder, more somber expression. Peter took my hand and led me into his courtyard. The door slammed shut behind us. Don't follow us. A few bodyguards exchanged glances and eventually said, all right. Sister, did you come to call me for a meal? Without the bodyguards around, Peter seemed to return to his previous cheerful self. No, I came to say goodbye. Peter's voice suddenly rose a few decibels. Where are you going? I told him about applying for jobs, getting an interview, and the subsequent offer. Although it's great here, you mentioned on the mountain that every day is a new beginning with endless possibilities and vitality. I also want to give myself a fresh start, to live without regrets. So, sister, have you moved on from that person in your heart? I looked at him with some surprise. Peter blinked. Don't think of me as a child. A painter's eyes are quite sharp. Hearing him say that, I felt a bit embarrassed. Well, I guess I have moved on. Then where are you going to work? North City. Although I had considered moving to a city farther from Rockey, I had lived in North City ever since my grandmother took me in. I grew up there, went to school there, and my classmates are there. Why should I force myself to adapt to a new city just to avoid Rockey? Then I'll move with you. My family is looking for me anyway. I didn't expect to end up hitching a ride with Peter. Returning to North City, and possibly facing Rockey's tense emotions again, seemed to fade away amidst Peter's incessant planning. Life in North City seemed to go smoothly. The interview went well, and I received a notice to start work next week. I rented an apartment near the company. However, after disappearing for 2 days, Peter reappeared as my neighbor. I went out to take out the trash and saw workers moving furniture in next door. Glancing over, I saw Peter, tall and leggy, directing the workers in arranging the furniture. "What are you doing here? I was planning to surprise you, but I guess you caught me." Peter naturally bent down and took the trash bag from my hand. "I miss the food you make, so I came to be your neighbor and mooch off your cooking." His appearance was indeed a pleasant surprise. Living in an unfamiliar place, having him as a neighbor added a sense of security. "Then I'll cook a few dishes later to celebrate your move." To keep it simple, we decided to have hot pot at home. As the red oil broth boiled, Peter scooped a freshly cooked piece of beef tripe into my bowl. After just one bite, I found it so spicy that I couldn't help but gulp down some drink. "So you can't eat spicy food? I heard you love hot pot, so I thought, it's nothing. I might not have had it in a long time, so I'm a bit out of practice." How long has it been since I last had hot pot? I couldn't quite remember. I used to love hot pot the most. When my grandmother was around, she would have the clear broth, and I would have the spicy one. Once, Rockey worked late, and the food I brought was already a bit cold. It happened to be snowing lightly outside, so I suggested going out to eat. I took him for hot pot. Rockey's taste is usually bland, so I specifically ordered a split pot, but throughout the meal, Rockey kept frowning. On the way home, he said, "Don't eat this again, it makes me smell like it all over." Since then, I haven't had spicy hot pot. When you don't eat something for a long time, even your taste buds can become unaccustomed. But thankfully, soon I was sweating from eating, rediscovering the joy of hot pot. After dinner, Peter cleaned up the table, tidied the kitchen, and opened the window for ventilation. When he left, he took out the trash bags. Life back in North City was even more peaceful than I had expected. The media didn't discuss the long-absent Mrs. Rockey, and no one from Rockey's family came looking for me. My presence never warranted attention. Instead, the media showed more curiosity about Rockey's ever-present assistant. I scrolled through those paparazzi photos. It all seemed extremely ironic. Does Rockey really love Serena so much? In the photos, Rockey is bending down, letting the woman adjust his tie. When getting into the car, he carefully shields her head. On a rainy day, her hand reaches up high to shield him with an umbrella, and he always tilts the umbrella towards her. It turns out that love for someone can so easily shift just because of a similar face. Rockey has always protected Serena's news well. No photos of her have ever leaked. Everyone is speculating if I have been completely forgotten by Rockey. If I were still at Rockey's house, I might be waiting for a husband who never comes home. But now I am busy organizing plans and attending meetings. Busy. "Peter, I told you, you can't keep acting so spoiled around me." I pushed away the head resting on my shoulder. Peter pushed my computer away and said discontentedly, "With a handsome guy like me in front of you, why are you staring at an old man?" Hearing someone call Rockey an old man for the first time, I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of Rockey's reaction. When I looked up after laughing enough, I saw Peter's expression had turned serious. "Is he the one who hurt you before?" "Rockey from our group. I know him." I looked at him in surprise. I had never seen Peter at Rockey's house. When I was young, my mother made me call him Uncle. I couldn't help but laugh again, clutching my stomach and falling onto the sofa. "He's only 4 years older than you, and you're calling him Uncle." Peter pinched my face. "He looks older." Rockey had been involved in company affairs from a young age, appearing more mature than his peers. So, saying that wasn't entirely unreasonable. "So, you're the missing Mrs. Rockey from the Rockey family?" Peter's face suddenly loomed large in front of me. I then realized that I had somehow ended up resting my head on Peter's lap while laughing. I tried to push him away to sit up, but he, unusually not as accommodating as before, looked at me intently, as if demanding an answer. "Yes. Then am I your kept man outside?" Peter said this and then burst into laughter. I reached out and slapped him lightly. "Stop making jokes. And I've already left Rockey's house and returned the ring to him. Then I'll get a lawyer, and you two can get divorced tomorrow." "No need. We don't have a marriage certificate." I gave a bitter smile. Without a marriage certificate, there's no need for a divorce. The only bond between us was that symbol of marriage, the ring. Perhaps Mrs. Rockey had been around for so long that even Rockey had forgotten that we didn't even have a marriage certificate. Then why not help me get a marriage certificate? Looking at the freshly minted marriage certificate in my hand, I was momentarily lost in thought. Back then, I thought my marriage certificate would have a photo of Rockey and me, and never expected the groom to be someone else. Last night, under Peter's persistent pleading, I agreed to help him with a fake marriage to deal with his family. Peter took the marriage certificate from me. I'll take it back to show my family. Otherwise, my mom will always think I'm lying to her. This marriage felt very unreal. 3 years ago, the grand wedding had the ceremony but no marriage certificate. Everything seemed like a facade of happiness meant for show. Now, we have the marriage certificate but no wedding. I felt a sense of calm inside, perhaps because with no expectations, there would be no disappointment. After taking the marriage certificate back home, Peter brought some good news. My parents have agreed to let me hold the art exhibition. This time, I'm really satisfied with the work. A month later, Peter's art exhibition was a success. I had to work late that day, and by the time I finished, it was almost 8. As I rushed to the exhibition, I saw a figure in the crowd that looked a lot like Rockey. Shaking my head, it must be someone with a similar build. Entering the venue, many of the paintings on display looked familiar. Several girls around me were excitedly carrying art books. Hurry, hurry, Peter is just ahead. We must get his signature this time. I heard this is his last exhibition. If we miss this, there will be no chance to get his signature again. I followed their gaze and indeed saw Peter towering above the crowd. He had his head lowered, patiently signing for those in front of him. I thought this was his first exhibition. How could it be his last? My gaze wandered, and I noticed an introduction about Peter near the entrance. It turned out he was already a renowned artist, with previous works touring the country and many pieces fetching sky-high prices. I stood there, suddenly hesitant to approach. The Peter in the introduction seemed different from the big boy who used to be affectionate with me. I quietly left. Outside, I saw Rockey standing by the roadside, frowning and on the phone. It turned out I hadn't been mistaken earlier. Rockey dialed the number he had never called before, again and again. Though he knew the response would only be a mechanical message saying Haley's number was disconnected, he found that apart from this number, he didn't know who else to contact to find her. Thinking of the profiles seen at the exhibition, an uneasy feeling flickered in his heart. He had once been grateful for Haley's background. She had no family, and her friends seemed to be few and far between, leaving her without support in this world. Only he and the Rockey family could be her support. So he always felt that even if she died, Haley would never really leave the Rockey family. Earlier, the butler had called, saying the number had become disconnected. He had dismissed it. Unless she dies outside, she will eventually come back. The butler had been shocked. Could the lady have really had an accident? He scoffed. It was impossible. If there had been an accident, the police would have contacted him, her husband. But over half a year had passed, and Haley had not appeared. Seeing that painting today made his heart pound. The portrait resembled Haley, yet seemed somewhat different. The woman in the painting had a light in her eyes that was more vibrant than the rising sun behind her, dazzling enough to be hard to look at directly. Haley was not like this. She was more like a stagnant pool of water. Even a mud statue had some temper, but Haley was like water. A gentle squeeze. And not only would she not show any temper, but she couldn't even muster a single angry word for a long time. When bullied severely, she would just hide away alone. He had once seen her crying alone by the glass house. Hearing his footsteps, she had run back to her room like a frightened kitten. He had always disliked her being so inconspicuous. Even though she was Rockey's wife, she would only dare to put on airs outside. Once back at the Rockey house, she would be put back in her place. He wanted to buy that painting, to hang it in Haley's room so she could see it every day, but Peter said, "This is the portrait I'm most satisfied with for my wife. Sorry, I can't part with it." Hearing this, he inexplicably felt a sense of relief. The person in the painting was truly not Haley, but after the exhibition, he felt a strange urgency to contact Haley. She had been angry for too long. She should come back soon. Under the repeated mechanical tones, he finally lost his patience and looked at the bodyguard. "Find out where the lady is and bring her back as soon as you find her." When the Rockey family's bodyguards knocked on the door, Peter was setting the table in the dining room. As soon as the door opened, several bodyguards rushed in, but he stopped them. "Who are you looking for?" The bodyguard's gaze fixed on me, holding the spatula. "Madam, President Rockey sent us to bring you back." I hadn't heard that title for over half a year. It felt like a different world. "What are you calling me? This is my wife." Peter pushed the bodyguards out. but they exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a phone and dialed Rockey. President Rockey, it seems Madam has gotten married. Rockey arrived faster than I expected. In just a few minutes, he was standing at the door, looking extremely grim. The bodyguard stepped aside, and Rockey tried to push Peter away. He didn't budge. Get him off me, Rockey ordered the bodyguards angrily. Rockey, you're breaking into my house and trying to take my wife. Doesn't this seem a bit inappropriate? Only then did Rockey properly face Peter. So the person in that painting is my wife? Shouldn't I be asking you for an explanation? Explanation? We're already married. She's my legal wife. Rockey sneered, his gaze lingering on me. Haley, have you gotten so bold, running off to get married to someone else behind my back? Come back now, and I'll pretend nothing happened. He extended a hand towards me. In the past, whenever he extended his hand, I would have grabbed it without hesitation, but this time, I didn't move. Rockey, I've already returned the ring. We're settled. We're even now. Settled? I, Rockey, raised you to this point, and you think a simple as settled will clear things up? Haley, are you even speaking human language? Rockey's eyes were bloodshot, and Peter, momentarily distracted, was knocked down by him. Rockey grabbed my hand, almost crushing my wrist. You're going to divorce him right now. If you want to get married to me, we'll finalize the divorce first. I slapped Rockey's face with my free hand. Everyone in the room froze. Rockey seemed stunned by what I had done. Rockey, are you out of your mind? I've left the Rockey family and don't want that marriage certificate anymore. I'm leaving. You can take whoever you want. Let's just move on, okay? Why should I let you go? You were raised by the Rockey family. You have to die here, even if it's in the Rockey family. Rockey suddenly picked me up, but was blocked by Peter's bodyguards coming out of the elevator. President Rockey, if you try to take her today, I'll accuse you of kidnapping. Don't think I'm incapable of protecting my wife. I was a bit shaken. This situation was something I had never anticipated. I thought that by leaving, Rockey would feel relieved, and that saying we were even might even make him happy. Now, I didn't know who Rockey was trying to impress with his behavior. It was unclear which side's bodyguards acted first, but the scene quickly descended into chaos. Peter ended up fighting Rockey, and fortunately, Peter won. However, Rockey's punch left Peter's left cheek looking quite severe. President Rockey, as you age, fighting isn't really suitable for you. It's better to avoid showing off. I tugged at Peter's sleeve, worried about possible retaliation from Rockey. Rockey had never fought anyone before, and now he was so disheveled. Several bodyguards were also injured. Help him back, and don't come looking for me again. I pulled Peter back inside. He covered his face and frowned. Honey, he hit hard. Please check if I have any facial injuries. I fetched the medical kit. Stop making a fuss. I'll apply some medicine for you. As I leaned in, he suddenly turned his head and kissed my lips. This works much better than medicine. Why did you just accept me calling you a wife when Rockey was here? I handed him the iodine. You once said we were just getting a certificate, not actually getting married. Peter smiled triumphantly. I just wanted a legal status for myself first, so you wouldn't get taken away by Rockey. You're committing marriage fraud. Yeah. I'm using my job to exchange for my freedom in marriage. If it's fraud, I've invested my whole life in it. If you divorce me, I'd be left without a wife and stuck working at the company forever. How tragic. I finally understood why he said it was his last exhibition. I poked his injured cheek. Are you stupid? Yeah. So don't leave me. At least I can be both pained and happy for the rest of my life. I nodded, and Peter took it a step further. Honey, can I kiss you openly now? Before I could answer, his kiss was already upon me. The situation spiraled out of control, and Peter seemed like a child who finally got his treat. When I tried to push him away, I had already turned into a puddle of water. Peter, Don't worry, I'll be gentle. In my dazed state, I finally experienced firsthand what Peter meant by having good stamina. Peter moved with me to a new place. He said he was afraid Rockey would harass us again. The new place was quiet for a while, until Peter took me to a bridal shop to choose a wedding dress. I had no idea about the wedding plans. Since the day we got our marriage certificate, I've been preparing. When I drew that picture, I thought, I must make you my most beautiful bride. Peter took care of all the wedding details personally. I was only occasionally pulled by his mother to give some reference opinions. When selecting the hotel, we unexpectedly ran into Rockey in the garden of the atrium. I originally wanted to avoid him and leave, but he saw me first. Haley, come back, okay? I will take good care of you for the rest of my life, just as Grandma said. Rockey's house is where you grew up. Don't you want me? Don't you want our home? I pulled my hand from his grasp. I've been at Rockey's house for so many years, but you never treated me as family. I now have a new family. I just hope you won't bother me in the future. Peter's parents like me very much, especially when they learned that my parents had passed away and I had no relatives left in the world. Peter's mother hugged me and cried in pain. She said she would be my mother from now on. I really like the home Peter gave me. It's a place where I truly feel I belong. At Rocky's house, my only relative was Grandma. Now that Grandma has passed away, there's nothing left to hold on to. I saw Peter come out and waved to him as I ran over. He helped me tighten my coat and held me close while discussing details with the hotel manager. Rocky stood still, his eyes constantly following my departing figure. But that figure never looked back. Epilogue: Rocky's perspective. I pride myself on never misjudging people in the business world for so many years. But I never expected that I never really understood Haley, who was closest to me. I thought she was helpless and could be easily manipulated. But after she went out, she suddenly became bold. When Grandma insisted that we marry, I agreed verbally, but only held a wedding for her sake. I deliberately didn't register our marriage, and she endured it without even complaining to Grandma. I put Serena's favorite yellow roses in front of her intentionally, watching her face turn pale, and finally understood what she cared about. So, when the woman who looked like Serena appeared in front of me, I agreed without hesitation. Sure enough, Haley's face turned extremely ugly. I didn't expect her to lose her temper and throw our wedding rings. I always thought she was like a runaway child, but I didn't realize she had grown up while I wasn't paying attention. I was no longer her only support. She had a job, new friends, and even got married. I was downstairs waiting for the bodyguards to bring her back, only to hear from them that she had married. I almost dropped my phone. She said she wanted to clear things up with me, as if she wanted to sever all ties and become strangers for the rest of her life. In my agitation, I acted out, but I ended up not beating that damned kid. I remember he was annoying when he was little. I was only a few years older than him, and he even called me uncle. Now that he's grown up, he's even more annoying. But Haley showed concern in her eyes when he was injured. Perhaps she doesn't even realize it herself. Her eyes only have that damned kid while she's all guarded toward me. I suddenly felt like I lost something that I might never get back. Their wedding invitation arrived in my hands, and the photo of their smiles was particularly glaring. We also had a grand wedding back then, but I was so indifferent that I couldn't even be bothered to take a photo with her. All the arrangements were left to the butler, and I was an outsider, as if I were just a guest at the wedding. She must have been disappointed with that wedding, right? For so many years, I was used to having her by my side, taking her presence for granted, always thinking she would be there. Only now do I realize that some people, once lost, will never belong to me again. She no longer wants Rocky's house, and I am forever left in Rocky's house. The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.